I picked up the head, and to my horror, it was a real human head. Hello and welcome to this channel, Lord of Fantasy, in English. Today's story is intended for adults only, as it involves disturbing events and crimes. Village of Kor. Hello, my name is Jack. I am a man in my mid-30s. I joined the police academy later than usual and become a newly graduated police officer. I was assigned to a village far from the city called Kor Village. I found the name very strange. An officer told me it was named after the word corn because it is full of corn fields. The officer said that I was lucky since as a beginner I had been assigned to a quiet, peaceful village where I could relax and where the people were kind. As if I had become a police officer just to relax and live a peaceful life among friendly people. I went on a long journey to the village because it was very far from the city, so I had to move there. When I arrived, I found a police woman waiting for me. This was my first meeting with Officer Laura. She welcomed me and said, "You must be the new officer. Welcome to Kor Village. Come with me. I will take you to the police station." I greeted her back. It sounded like something said to a criminal. I told her, "I didn't mean that. I know you're joking. I was just teasing you." While Laura was talking, I found myself observing her. She was a beautiful girl with dark black hair, working as a police officer here. It seemed that my luck wasn't as bad as I had thought. As we walked toward the station, Laura introduced me to the village and showed me the shops and workshops. Some of the villagers greeted me on our way, and they all seemed very kind. However, I couldn't get rid of the strange feeling that had started the moment my feet touched this village. There was a cold sensation as if a chill had crept into my body, sending shivers through me. Even thought the weather was warm and pleasant spring. I felt as if someone watches me cautiously, but I couldn't determine from where. Finally, we arrived at the police station. Laura said, "Welcome to the Kor Village Police Department. I hope they assign you as my partner. I am new too. I've only been here for 2 weeks." I looked at the station. It was a large small village. Not extremely small, but compared to other places, it was still a small village. It also had 2 satellite villages with slightly funny names. Right arm and left arm. Together they were like one large village spread across a vast area of cornfield. There were only 14 police officers in the department, which was very few for a village like this and for such a large station. I went in to meet the police chief. He welcomed me and began speaking. Welcome to our department. I am Chief David. You will start your duties and patrols tomorrow. Laura will be your partner. There is a police residence building about 100 meters to the right of the station. I apologize that this is not full explanation at the moment, and that I can't introduce you to the rest of the officers right now, but I have an urgent matter to attend to. I will leave that task to Laura. I was extremely tired, so I left the station and went straight to the residence to shower and rest. It had been a long day traveling from the city to such a distant village. When I reached the police residence building, I noticed a large livestock facility across the street. It also had a section for slaughtering and skinning. They raised many kinds of animals there: snakes, crocodiles, pigs, goats, cows, and horses, for various products such as meat, milk, and skins. It was a very strange facility for a village like this, which depended mainly on corn farming. I went up to the residence building, which looked very much like the apartment rented in Enemy series. The design was very similar, and I liked it. My room number was 004. It seemed that the police officers were not required to stay in this building permanently. It contained 10 apartments, but only 4 of them were occupied. The apartment I lived in and next to it was Laura apartment number 003. 2 other apartments on the ground floor were occupied by 2 other officers who, like us, had transferred from far away. The rest of the officers in this village lived either in the main village of Coeur or in one of the 2 arms. The best thing from the moment I arrived until now about this village was that I had a beautiful neighbor, my partner at the station, Laura. I woke up very early the next day to the sound of my door being knocked on violently and repeatedly. It felt like a sudden inspection. The way the door was struck shocked me, as if someone intended to break it down and force their way in. I opened the door quickly, but found no one there. It was completely dark. What caught my eye was a terrifying sight in front of the building opposite the police residence. In the front of the slaughterhouse door, a truck was stopped there and 3 people were being unloaded, chained. Other people were wearing frightening masks, were dragging them, beating and torturing them, pulling them across the ground as if they were livestock. I rushed toward them before they could go inside and shouted at the top of my voice, "Stop where you are!" One of the men dragging the chain let go and ran toward me, trying to stop me. I knocked him to the ground and punched him hard on the chain, knocking him unconscious, and then continued running toward the others. Suddenly, I opened my eyes to to the sound of knocking on the door, and I was in my bed. I jumped up in shock. Everything I had seen seemed to have been a terrifying nightmare, yet it felt horrifyingly real. I was still shaken and couldn't believe it had only been a dream. I ran to the door and found my beautiful neighbor, Laura, standing outside. Laura said to me, "Good morning, welcome my partner." I replied, "Give me 5 minutes. It seems I'm late because I was very tired and couldn't sleep well." Laura told me that she would introduce me to the rest of the officers when we went to the station to collect our patrol car, as we would be going on a long patrol all day between the central village of Coeur and the right and left arms. We arrived to the police station. We went to the receptionist, Jennifer, one of the 14 officers. Her duty was reception, handling citizen complaint, and connecting officer if something urgent came up. Behind her was an elderly employee named Brian. He was even older than the police chief, and all the officers respected him. Although he wasn't officially the deputy chief, he had the same authority and even greater respect and experience. He handled paperwork, evidence analysis, and could be considered the genius of the department. There was something strangely unsettling about the aura around him. Jennifer welcomed us, saying, "Welcome, rookie. Your name is Jack, right? You've been lucky to get such a kind and hard-working partner, our lovely Laura." "How are you, Laura?" Laura replied, "I'm fine. How about you, Jennifer?" Jennifer and said, "I'm very tired, Laura. I haven't had a moment of rest for 2 straight weeks." Laura asked her where the other employee Cindy was. "I only saw her once when I came 2 weeks ago and haven't seen her since. I had to ask, 'And Cindy who?'" Laura said that the second receptionist name is Cindy. Jennifer told us that Cindy suddenly disappeared. She doesn't answer calls, and I haven't heard from her even once. I'm worried about her. I even called her family, but they haven't seen her either. Can you search for her around her village? She lived in the right arm. Laura replied, "Of course we will search for her." We took the car key and went. While I was driving, Laura told me about the other members: Henry, Bruce, Steve, Lisa, Drake, Josh, Amy, and Joey. Me, Laura, Brian, and the captain. We became 14 members with the 2 receptionists. I still think this number is small for such a large department. With the 3 neighboring villages, there were more members before, but they are no longer here. Laura told me, apart from you and me, there are Amy and Joey from outside the village. They live on the ground floor of the police department residence. Cindy, the second receptionist, lives in the right arm. The other officers, Drake, George, and Bruce, who live in the right arm. Brian, Steve, Lisa, the police chief, and the receptionist staff, including Jennifer, live in the left arm. Me, Laura, Amy, Joey, and Henry live in the main body of the village, which I call the body because there are two arms. It's not logical to call it just the core. The other two villages are the right arm and left arm. So, I told Laura, you know you're the only one who calls the Kor Village the body, right? Laura replied, are you enjoying teasing me? Yes, I know that. We finished our patrol in the Kor Village and headed toward the right arm. There's a distance of 8 miles between the right arm and Coeur, and another 8 miles between the left arm and Coeur. The distance between the two arms is 16 miles. Then Laura began asking me. We started toward the right arm. What made you become a police officer in your 30s? I told her when I was a kid I wanted to become a superhero who stop the bad guys and defeat them. Laura replied, you're mocking me again. It seems like your only fun here is to tease me. Well, let me tell you why I became a police officer. My dream was to do what my parents did. They were both police officers and were very famous in the department where they worked. They caught many thieves and criminals, both inside and outside the city, of all kinds: criminals, assailants, thieves, and murderers. They had many enemies. After my mother gave birth to me, she resigned to take care of me. One day my father was delayed at work. The gang members he had arrested in the past were out for revenge. They wanted to kidnap me and my mother and assault us. I was 10 years old at the time, but my mother grabbed her gun and fired at the attackers. They exchanged gunfire and my mother was killed. When my father arrived, they had already kidnapped me and started to flee. The police, including my father, chased them. They cornered them in an abandoned building. My father somehow managed to get inside and rescued me from their hands. But during my rescue, he was shot multiple times in the back. He died from his injuries almost immediately. But the police caught the criminals and they were sentenced to life imprisonment. I replied to Laura, life imprisonment is an ineffective punishment for killing. My story is very similar to yours, Laura. I had a wife and a child. One day while I was working at a bank in the city, I noticed something strange. It Several individuals entered the bank, looking suspicious and observing their surroundings in a way that seemed off. I approached one of them when I noticed something shiny in his coat. I activated the alarm and tackled him to the ground. We found he was carrying a firearm. The security personally captured him and I tried to neutralize him, but the alarm was still going off, which caused confusion. Their operation failed, but they managed to escape before the police arrived. A few days later, I received a package at work. It was large and heavy. I didn't see the delivery person, but the package was handed to one of the employees to deliver to me. When I opened the box, I saw the severed head of my wife and daughter. I was in hysterical shock and lost consciousness. I was taken to the hospital. The police later told me that my wife and daughter had been killed and dismembered so badly that it was hard to recognize them after the mutilation. They said the investigation was still going, but they hadn't found any leads. They mentioned that it might be related to the incidents at the bank, as the man I tackled there was caught. The police theory was that his gang did this as a revenge. Laura replied, "I'm so sorry for making you remember such a painful memory, Jack." I said, "It's okay." After 2 years of psychological therapy, I decided to become a police officer. I wanted to catch one of them to take my revenge in a satisfying way. I won't hand him over to the police. I know this is a terrible thing to do, but I plan to cut him up like they did to my wife and daughter. I'm not a criminal to do this to anyone, but I want revenge for my wife and daughter. They had no power or strength to defend themselves. They didn't do anything bad their whole lives. They were kind and beautiful, and they gave me the hope I live on. But they were taken from me by people who didn't deserve to be alive. The gang member I caught was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and then he was released on bail after only 2 years. Life imprisonment is not enough to satisfy the anger I feel for what they did to me and my family. I will have my revenge. As a result of my record with psychological treatment, I was accepted into the police force, but it was extremely difficult. I was immediately transferred to a faraway village to avoid causing problems in the city. Due to my therapy history, it was so difficult to join the police force because of that, which is why I had to retake the college exam 5 times over 10 years before I was accepted. So now I'm a new officer in my 30s. But Laura, it seems you didn't notice something strange. You seemed to sympathize with my story so much that you didn't notice what was happening in the field. Look closely. There are a large number of scarecrows in the cornfield. I know they are necessary to scare away the birds and crows, but there are so many of them in a small area. There are at least 10 scarecrows in a very strange shape. Even from a distance, the pepper spoke. Really, they look strange, but why did you stop? They're just a scarecrow, Laura said. I have a strange feeling. I want to get closer and see for myself. As we get closer to the scarecrow, they weren't close to each other, but you could say there was one every 10 meters. We got really close to them, and I began examining one closely. It was crafted in a surprisingly intricate way for a scarecrow. The one who made it paid so much attention to detail. The most unsettling thing was the head. It was really terrifying. The moment I got out of the car, both Laura and I felt that strange sensation. The cold crept into my body and I shivered. This time I wasn't the only one feeling this way. Laura seemed very frightened too. It was as if we were being watched the entire time, and this time it wasn't just from the direction of the scarecrow, which seemed like they were watching us, but from all sides. Although, as far as the eye could see, there were only cornfields. I tried to touch the head of the scarecrow, and the texture was strange. I tried to reach for it, but the scarecrow was hanging from a high pole, so when I touched it, the head fell to the ground. The scarecrow fell too. And that's when the shock hit me. The scarecrow face seemed to be staring at us. I picked up the head, and to my horror, it was a real human head. Laura nearly screamed at the top of her lungs. I quickly put my hand over her mouth and said, "Don't scream. Calm down and we will get back to the car quickly. There's something very suspicious going on this village. I'm sure of it." And this was the end of our video. I hope you subscribe to watch the rest of the story next time. Thank you for watching.